Welcome back, dear friends, and I am thrilled that we are here today with my good friend and one of the leaders here, Brother John Pearson. Thank you for being with us today.
It's good to be here, Jeff.
And we are going to talk about a couple different subjects. And Brother John, these are kind of hand-picked subjects, ones that I know that God has gifted you in, that you've worked hard in, that you've developed in your own life. And so we'll start off this first one with time management. And so let us just jump straight in without any further ado. And I'll just ask you the first question. I wrote a list of questions here. So how would you personally define time management?
Let's say time management is using the time resource during the day to get the most productivity out of the day without making yourself so busy with things that you don't have time to keep, your reserves up, your emotional, your mental, your spiritual, all those sorts of things, but still getting the most you can out of the day.
Okay. So for my missionary friends that are listening, wherever God has placed you or the ones that, it's a desire in your heart to serve the Lord, all of us have that 24 hours in the day, but not all of us use the 24 hours like we should use those 24 hours. And so that managing wisely, that time that God is, numbering our days. We're living in the evil days. So numbering our days, using this wise. So let me ask, what role does time management play in your daily life?
Time management for me has become such a habit that it's really not a list of things I do anymore. It's just a person I've become. Getting up early and getting the important things done early has just become such a part of my life that I don't even think of other terms. And so as you build these habits into your life, they soon just become the person that you are. And then you can leverage all of that to do whatever it is you're doing, your normal job, your spiritual life, all those things.
Okay, so take us back in your life. When did this start in your life where you really grabbed the hold of it and said, you know what, if I'm going to accomplish more, because not everybody accomplishes the same amount in a day. And so where did this come about in your life?
I think it came from just loading my day up with different things. I had different interests. And part of it was work, and part of it was I wanted to grow spiritually, and just trying to get everything into a day. I had to make some selections about what was important, what was the priority for the day, and how was I going to just in a beneficial way use my time to advance in each of the areas that I had brought into my life.
Okay, was there a turning point at a certain age, or you're in high school and you're thinking, you know what, I got to get serious, or any turning point that you remember?
Yeah, probably salvation was the big turning point. But in my mind, my dad had a furniture store when I was young, and a lot of the time management things that I learned from him were just, Dad was, you had to get the work done that had to get done. And and then of course, I'm 63 now, Jeff, so I have a bit of a jaded view of not jaded, but I have a view of myself as a teenager as much more responsible than I probably was. So reaching back into history to say, hey, I developed this at a young age is probably, that could be the way I remember it, but that's probably not true. So my late teens, early 20s, when I got saved at 20, was probably the biggest single turning point, because the desire to grow in the faith came into my life, and that was a whole new category and soon became the main category. And so time management became an issue.
Amen. Okay. What does a typical day look like for you in terms of scheduling tasks?
I'll break it down kind of in the way I look at time management.
Okay.
And, there's thousands of pages written on time management. A lot of them are good, but it's kind of a paradox. If you don't have good time management skills, then reading those thousands of pages is really not going to
productive. Yeah.
So what I did was I boiled things down into just 5 principles. And these are the principles that I use pretty much every day. I do like to get up early. I also go to bed early, but I do like to get up early because in those first early morning hours, especially when I was running a business, those early morning hours are hours where there were no employees around. Nobody was sending me emails. No clients were calling. And so I had 4 to 5 hours. If I get up at 4 a.m. and I'm ready for work by 4:30, I have 4 to 5 hours of completely, unmolested time. Nobody's looking for me. Nobody's asking anything of me. And so that was kind of the key. And then you put the important stuff in that 4 to 5 hours. So nobody's bothering you. you can get done the really important things you need to get done, unless they involve other people, the majority of them on your own. And then by the time the world starts coming to life and calling upon you and making demands of your time, it's easier to accommodate because the important stuff is already done. And so getting up early is a key to good time management. Secondly, I never like to wake up not knowing what the plan is for the day. And so one of my time management principles has been plan tomorrow's work today.
Amen.
So I know what I'm going to do tomorrow when I wake up. So that takes the whole guesswork out of it. And then I keep a system of recording things, the inputs, things that people want from me, requests that are being made. And I keep that, and I don't react to them in the minute I compile them. And when I get the important things done, then I can go to them. There's a time management principle that's gotten pretty popular. I learned it from Mark Twain, not in person, but through a book. And Mark Twain said he has this principle called eat the frog. And the frog is that thing you dread doing. You don't want to do it. And he said his parable was this: if the first thing you did every day was eat a live frog, you knew that everything you did after that would be much easier. And so the longer you put off eating the frog, the bigger the frog gets and the harder it is to eat. And so that's a great principle. And then another one that I learned was work all the time that you're working. We had a family member, I won't name any names. We had a family member who was doing really good in school. And then all of a sudden, this particular family member was not doing good in school. And so when I went out and I went to study one night with him, and I found that there was several different windows open on the computer, and only one of them was school. One of them was chat, one of them was Spider Solitaire, and one of them was a sitcom. And it soon became apparent what was happening to their study habits. And we found that if we closed those other three windows and just worked while we worked, then so much more got done and grades came up. And so, if you work while you're working, you can rest while you're resting, you can play while you're playing, and you're not bearing the guilt of, I'm resting, but I got stuff I should do. And so those are kind of the basic daily principles I use, but it starts with getting up early and knowing what you're going to do, working while you work, do the difficult things first. And then if the rest of the day, if after lunch things come apart, you still had a great day.
Amen. Well, those 5 principles are amazing, and they're great. I think the Mark Twain says, well, so if you have to eat that frog, but if you have 2 frogs, pick the biggest and the ugliest one, eat him first, right?
That's right.
Amen. Okay. Right. How do you differentiate between what is, and you alluded to this a little bit, but how do you differentiate between what is urgent and what is important?
The important things are things that you decide the day before that they are going to be important to your day. People will try to put urgent things on your schedule on a daily basis, and you can make that decision whether you respond to them or not. If the house is on fire, that's urgent and important, and you just have to respond. You can't make a decision about that. But primarily, having to do things in an urgent or hasty or last minute way is just the result of not planning tomorrow, not planning today what you're going to do tomorrow. So much of that gets eliminated when you do that.
And I think many of us would be guilty, I would say all, but many would be guilty of there's so many urgent things that continue happening throughout the day that you stay busy and you never really get to what your list is.
Right. And so if you look at the way Jesus managed his time, he didn't react to people's needs immediately. He was always busy, but he was never in a hurry. And he waited for the right timing on things to do things. But also at the same time, you can leave yourself with a lack of direction in a day. And that's where other people's demands on you can become the priority for you. By the way, priority is a singular word. Priorities is a mutation of that word. If you have multiple priorities in a day, then none of them are really a single priority. So priority is meant to be a singular word. A new priority can move in after you complete one that's a priority, but to say priorities really takes the effectiveness out of that word. And so it's good to know in advance what the main thing is for the day.
Yes, and that multitasking, like you were saying, that multitasking is quite a mirage.
It is.
You only trick yourself to think
Yeah.
that you could do multiple things. You're
Yeah.
you're not a jack of all trades. At the end of the day, just it doesn't work out. So,
Right.
are there any tools or apps or methods that you use to stay organized?
I'm not as much for apps because I'm a little bit computer illiterate when it comes to those sorts of things. Um, I'm 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 a checklist guy. I like to
Hmm.
write it down on a notepad, and I like to put a little box next to it because there's some little rush I get by
Sure.
checking off things on the list. And really, the time tested manner for me, of course, I'm 63, so the time tested manner for me has been a notebook and a pen.
Mhm.
Um, I've used some apps in the past, but I don't have one that I would say is great. Outlook for me has been a good one,
Mhm.
but I don't use that like I used to anymore just because it's it it lost its effectiveness for me.
Okay, let me ask you this: how do you track your deadlines and your long-term goals?
The deadlines and long-term goals are really just part of my checklist. I like to set personal deadlines because the actual deadline doesn't allow me any chance to recover from mistakes or lack of preparedness or all of that. So if something's due on Tuesday, I make it due on Sunday or something like
Hmm.
that. And in terms of long-term planning, I was a big planner and a big long-term planner, and I'm not as much as that anymore because of something that Truett Cathy said at one of our businessmen banquets back in 2005. He came and spoke to our businessmen, and he said, as a company, we don't do long range planning. I think his the ones that have followed him are big time into that, and I think he did more than he admitted to. But here's what he said. He said, I don't do 5 and 10 year plans. I keep myself positioned to take advantage of unexpected opportunities.
Mm.
And I thought there's a ton of wisdom in that.
Yeah.
And just keeping yourself in a place where when an when an opportunity comes up, you can take advantage of it rather than saying, I'm so locked into this 5 year plan
Mm.
that I'm not going to consider anything else. Um, there's a hedgehog principle in that locked into that 5 year plan, which is good also, or as some of our missionaries would like, a rhino principle, right?
Amen. Now we're speaking.
So, but the reality of it is that a good plan helps you stay on direction, but you should also be ready to take advantage of course corrections that God
Hmm.
allows to show up.
Amen. Okay, I've got a question. When you've got all these different tasks throughout the day and you're doing all these different things, how do you set that to the side or manage it so that later you can have maybe family time or hobbies or rest, relaxation, or whatever it may be?
Yeah, it's everybody was looking for balance all the time,
Hmm.
between the different facets of our life. And I really think balance is not the best word. The best word is blend. How do we blend all these things together? And so we created family time in our ministries at church. We created family time in our studies at home. We created family time just in regular activities. We had some times during the week that were just marked off. We're not working, we're not doing anything. We're going to be together for these sorts of things. But I found that bringing the family into everything you did was a better strategy than trying to balance
Hmm.
time.
That's good.
So kids would work at the business, or kids would, we'd be involved in. We always took vacations together. We never sent them anywhere, and it was just anniversary trips. We ditched the kids for anniversary trips.
Amen.
So we tried to blend it as much as we could.
Amen. Okay, I've got one more question. And when I give you this question, I'm going to give you a moment to think about it and share something. If you could give one piece of advice to someone struggling with time management, what would that be? And while let me ask you to chew on it for just a second. And let me say the application, I would say for all my friends that would be listening, I used to tell my pastor friends in Argentina, gentlemen, you are your own boss. And I'm like, yes. And that means that you are worthy of double honor and even more yes. And, everybody was getting really excited. But it also means if you're a bad boss, you deserve to get paid nothing. And if you're a good boss, you deserve more. And that would be your time. And all that goes into say what you do in your daily, the momentary, the daily habits, this time management it will end up resulting in, maybe it would be for their application, maybe more people in the church, or maybe better messages, or more people they could disciple, and all these different things, how they manage their time. If they just sit back, nothing happened. And so I believe it is very important for all of my friends. And I've seen too many that would be, they kind of neglected the day, maybe trying to multitask and playing around, and it's too many YouTube videos or whatever, and played around. And then all of a sudden reality hits when it's evening time. So they go home and they sit on the couch, they open the computer. Kids and mom are right there like, hey, let's do something, like, everybody leave me alone. And I'm in a bad mood because they're trying to catch up for what they neglected earlier.
Yeah.
And so all that to say, so here you go. Now somebody is struggling. What would be your best piece of advice that you can give to that person?
Well, my best piece may not be all that great, but I will tell you what I think regarding that. And that is, good time management is an assault on the human fabric. We're basically selfish and self-centered. Every human being is that. And to overcome that, to push yourself into an area where you think about your mission, your tasks, your purpose, all those sorts of things, more than you think about your personal comfort, is hard for any human being. I tell people, really, you need two plans. Plan number one is you got to have a good plan on what it is you're going to do, what your purpose is, what your focus is, what can you really sink your teeth in and go. And it's not hard for people to make that plan. Here's my plan to succeed. Here's what I want to do. I really think there's a second plan you got to make, and that is a plan to not fail. Romans 7:18 says, for I know that in me, that is in my flesh, dwelleth no good thing. For to will is present. That's my plan to succeed.
Right.
But how to perform that which is good, I find not. So I may have the greatest plan in the world, but I wake up to my own laziness and self-centeredness again, my own desire just to be entertained and not to learn or not to work. And so I need a plan to attack those. And my plan to not fail is going to be, how do I overcome my laziness? If it's an accountability thing and I need to give my computer and phone to somebody, if it's a time management thing where I need to set a timer and say, nobody bothers me for an hour, if whatever it is, I need that plan to not fail, because if I don't, I'm going to quickly lose enthusiasm in my plan to succeed. So I really think identifying and attacking those pieces of your life that are holding you back is really critical. And the Bible gives us all the information we need to overcome those.
Amen. Well, I appreciate your time. I appreciate your example, your testimony, and all that you've done and that you're doing. Thank you for your leadership here. And thank you for being a great servant and example in all you do. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Jeff.